season.
Good morning, and welcome to Duality. I am your host, Ash, and I am here with Danny, TC3. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome. And it's Danny T3C, but it's okay.
I'm sorry, I'm dyslexic.
You're the exception, don't worry.
I know. I do it all the time.
I know. I'm here for it, though.
It's dyslexia.
If
you
it's
know?
not you making, like that kind of, like, phrasing, then it's going to be me, and it's going to be everyone else. So we're just all working on it, okay?
All we can do is show up and honor our commitments in the way that we're supposed to, right? So, yeah, I mean, without further ado, we'll hop right into the topic. So we had a long list of topics that we want to talk about because, and I'm sure we'll have plenty other ones where we do, but the one that felt most resonant and most present was, honoring commitments because of just life and the different things that were coming up for us recently. And, I asked you, how do you honor your commitments? And, if you want to kind of get into that a little bit, we can start off with that.
So I'll be transparent. I struggled, like, really hard. And, like, I remember, like, when we were sitting last night and we were just, like, trying to figure it out. And, like, I remember just, like, that struggle of finding the words for it, like, having that just be, like, what it was. Like, like, it was, like, a matter of, like, not knowing the answer and therefore, like, making mistakes, throughout life. And, like, I used to look at that as, like, a negative thing because, well, like, when you make a mistake in sometimes dire moments or, like, things that kind of define your character or how you show up for a job or how you show up for your family members and the roles that you have, the things that you want to do, your goals. Making mistakes is inevitable, and, like, they're needed in my mind, mainly because, like, if you look at it a certain way, you're able to learn from them. And that moment of, like, learning from them, I think is pivotal and, like, sometimes isn't spoken about enough because, like, it's the moments where you have to sit with that acknowledgement of just owning up to your mistakes and being accountable for your actions. And, I feel like anytime I've done that, there's been a lot of fruitfulness that's came out of that. And, like, sometimes you just got to look it in the face and just be like, I'm doing my best. And, I'm just going to do it, even if it's not my best too. I think that was the thing that I was also struggling with. Oh, let's just do our best. And I was kind of agreeing with you there, but I'm like, I've been at the point where, like, I couldn't do my best because I didn't know my best. I didn't know how to move forward from a mistake, and I think that's important too because that's an important way for you to just, like, have the opportunity to just be put on by an elder, by an OG, by your parents, your good friends, your peers, especially in whatever issue that you have, and just gaining that perspective. Maybe when you didn't even expect you were going to get a lesson or an answer, but when you do, like, I think it's just important to just, like, take it step by step, or just, like, running in blindly and just, like, seeing what feels right for you in those moments.
I think you touched on, like, such a key point too when it comes to honoring our commitments, as a whole, but also, and I just want to focus in on one of the things that you said, talking about accountability. Our accountability starts with ourselves. We can have accountability to other places, things, and people, but most importantly, honoring ourselves and, like, and holding ourselves accountable. Like, can I do this? Is it going to be perfect? Probably not. Is it going to be exactly the way I wanted to do it? Maybe not. But can I still show up and provide something to a space? Honoring a commitment when you're not betraying yourself, is also important because it's like, is the commitment that you're honoring you, and honoring your needs? And sometimes we have to do that hard push to realize, like, you know what? coming here and speaking on things is honoring myself in that way. You know, maybe getting up and doing a workout or a meditation, or, you know, making a tea or providing, you know, some nourishment to ourselves. Maybe it's not what we want to do at the moment. Maybe it's not, you know, if we're running late or whatever the case is, maybe it's not the ideal circumstance in which time frame to do something. But even grabbing that yogurt before you leave, you know, is honoring yourself and honoring the commitment to nourish yourself, you know. And I feel like a lot of times, you know, I really consider, what is my word? You know, did I say I'm going to do something? And, you know, there is space for not things changing, you know. But for the most part, I do my best to honor my word. And if I say that I'm going to do something, I do my best to do that, even if it doesn't look or feel necessarily exactly how I anticipated it to. You know, I think it's so important for us to just gauge our own ability. Like, can I do this? Even when it feels like I can't, how can I show up in authenticity to a place or whatever the commitment is? You know, to provide our part, to provide your part of that. You know, a commitment is made with something else, with someone else, you know, in contract with something. And sometimes contracts break and sometimes things aren't meant to go forward. But if you still feel that validity and that you still feel strong to show up to something, I think it's important to really gauge, you know, and the only person can hold yourself accountable to a certain degree is ourselves. And rather than beating ourselves up on, you know, how we could have done things better, just taking heed and applying it next time. Because if we, you know, go into something and we committed our word and we still showed up, and it still, even though it might have not been the optimal situation, but we still felt good about showing up and having presence to something, next time, if you don't spiral into the shame of how you, or the perfectionism rather, how we could have done it better in that moment, we can just accept what is and then move forward with grace, and then give ourselves that much more of an opportunity and a window to actually build up exactly what we want to do to honor ourselves and our commitments. I think that that's really important, you know, because commitments is a big word. You know, when you make a commitment to something, it could be like, all right, this is a lot, you know, like, you know, and that can be intimidating sometimes. Simultaneously, most of the things that are worthwhile doing can be intimidating, especially in the beginning. And half of the times, you know, it seems impossible to even fulfill a commitment, and then you do it, you know, you show up. You show up the best you can. And in showing up, everything else kind of just falls into place if we give it space to. I think there's just that surrender that's needed to the moment, to the space, to whatever's being asked of us. Because if we committed to a commitment, right, we agreed that we should be a part of something. And then also know that we're worthy to be a part of something, even if we're not perfect. Even if we, you know, we're human. We have our faults. We have our imperfections. We have our things that we might not really enjoy, you know. But deeming ourselves worthy to show up imperfect, I think, is a beautiful part of honoring commitments. And that's the best way to learn, is by acknowledging all the things that we need to learn to grow, you know, and the things like, you know, what we were talking about yesterday, which was potentially going to be the name of the pod, was, you know, doing it wrong to do it right. Sometimes we got to make mistakes in order to figure out how to do it right, you know, because if you think you got it all put together and you're doing it, and you don't know the wrongs of it or the, you know, the missteps, it's bound. It's not an if, it's a when, you know, something kind of goes out of place so that you know how to navigate it.
There's a lot of gems you threw there. You've always been good at that. You've always been good at just you are. You've always been like just showing up for yourself, however you can.
I do my best.
And it shows. It shows in the way you just explain that, because like even with the context of bringing it to the forefront of how we show up for ourselves, right? And what that looks like in the moment, that's definitely something where like I would say like 9 times out of 10 I've just been like, can I do this? Can I really do this? Can I really like look forward and feel good about what I do? And definitely there's just been moments where I had to sit in that feeling of like not feeling great about even the things I love, even the things that like when it pertains to people I love, when it pertains to the things that I really put my heart and effort to, I think that's just in like a part of life to just like be human in that process for sure. I think especially when you tapped into just how we even look at what it means to honor a commitment in general, like the things that we set up for ourselves, because when you don't honor that commitment, there's a lesson behind that as well. Even when, it's funny. It's just like I remember when like I would go to like family like events, and like I was younger, and like I was like developing a sense of style, and like I was at like a certain age of angst, and I would show up, and like my family members would look at me like, why'd you wear that like that, like, and it's just like I remember like being in those moments like I really don't know, and then you go to like the next event with your friends, and then like you look around you and like everyone's doing that. Everyone has like their pants like sagging down in a certain way, when that was a thing. And or like when everyone had like a certain name brand, or people just wore things just cuz, like the way you presented yourself and like how that was communicated to others and how that reflects your reality. Like to me that's like factors that play into like how you show up for your commitments. I think like when you are in the space of just, in the season of just like trying to figure out what that means for you within your commitments, when in your presentation you've been presented with this realization like, oh man, like I don't know how a core part of how I want to show up here is like now translating. It stemmed from something small, like how I have presented to myself, to my peers or my family. But in that space, like recognizing that like, oh, maybe I shouldn't like really care. There's two ways to look at it. It's like I don't really care. Like, these are my peers, these are the people I'm learning from. Or like, maybe these things that I'm wearing right now aren't like authentic to who I am as a person. I feel like we have to face all that. And they can feel almost insignificant, especially when we're like rushing to do things and it's just like, oh, let me do this, let me do that. I feel like the season that I'm in now in relation to what you're saying is like a clear indication of like what kind of season I really am in. I'm kind of defining all these things that really alter the definition of a commitment and honoring such things. In my mind, like I'm never been really given that chance and like it feels like I'm giving that to myself the first time. And I think like, even just to answer that, it's just like to understand your values behind your commitments, and like giving space to that has been one of the hardest things recently. And I feel like I've been making mistakes behind that. I feel like left and right, once I acknowledge the presentation of, if I was to pick a topic here, preparation, like making the intention for how we show up for our commitments, the discipline behind these things, the focus behind these things. I think like when we say we want to start something or when we want to change an aspect of how we approach things, like, oh, I don't like the way that I'm like working out right now. I wish I had more like a like workout routine. And like when you try that like routine and like you're obliterated, like you can't even work out the next time, and it's like that season of just like, well, what am I doing wrong, and I think you just highlighted a really key point. It's just like you're gonna get it wrong, you're just gonna get it wrong, since that's out of your bounds, that's out of your boundaries. And like, to have someone in your circle that, like, I think does both, reflect on the things that, well, like, are you doing this kick right? And it's like, you have the other person, it's like, man, you're gonna get that kick wrong. You're gonna, like, have that moment where you're gonna be flat on your ass, like, just, like, probably, like, massaging your leg because you're not, like, doing it right. And, like, you have to find your own path in that. You have to figure it out. I think, like, really, like, it's important to, like, get these perspectives from people, because, like, it gives a key sense into how all of us may have, like, the strengths in one area and, like, struggle with others, and, like, the way we balance each other. It's, like, important to learn from people, even if they don't have it all figured out. Like, it's important to learn when you see someone in a frantic mode, how they're able to just persevere, even when they don't have it all together. It's really beautiful to see it in that way. And to have your own perspective in that sense, and just be like, like, it really feels like there's a different language here. There's something here that, I need to figure out for myself. And, like, that's also a part of honoring your commitments, because, like, in the sense, if we're talking the business world, there's such a thing as recontracting, how things are set up, how things make you feel, what the intentions are for the clauses that you make, the boundaries that you set, the goals that you set, the services you provide. And yeah, I just been giving that a lot of thought. And, like, I think that's what really inspired our conversation today, because, like, most people don't give that space. They tend to look at it from a, like, oh man, I've been going through a lot, with this new, like, season of just, like, money. I don't have enough money. Well, like, I've been presented with a lot, like, money where, like, I thought the amount I would have gotten, and when I did get it, it was gonna solve my problems with a certain thing. And when it didn't, it highlighted, like, a big thing in my life. I'm like, oh wow, like, I really thought something was going to be the solution to this, and it wasn't. And so then you're faced with, like, so then will I always fail at this? I thought I had the solution. As a matter of fact, I gave it 3 other solutions. What does that mean? And I remember, like, really, like, someone just telling me, like, dude, you tried it for, like, 3 months. It's not, like, and, like, someone letting me know, it's like, I've been doing this for 3 years. I'm still, like, getting the nooks and crannies out, And you look at your peer, and it's, like, seamless. It's like they got it all figured out.
Appearingly so.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the thing, too, is, like, as soon as you decide, you set your mind that you want to do something, the opposition's always right there.
Yeah.
But that's just how it always is. So in that, even thinking into the times right now, it's Mercury retrograde and Mars retrograde, as long as I believe, like, 1 or 2 other planets. And, it's just a time to reevaluate, to recharge and recalibrate, and in these moments, I find that we're presented with all of the opposition in such a way where it's like, it helps you to reevaluate why you make the commitments that you make. Because if you don't know and you don't feel resonant with why you're committed to something, you're bound to disengage. We live in a society where majority of people either undyingly are loyal to something, or they evade it, like, as much as possible. We're stepping away or deflecting and not having the capacity to commit. It's, you have the non-committal and then the undying loyal, right? And then there is a place in between, and that doesn't always get spoken, because I think that's the hardest place to be, is to know when to, what to be loyal to. Because it's like, how can you be loyal to anything if you're not loyal to yourself? Because if you're not loyal to yourself, then you're loyal to ideals, and usually that's out of some kind of ego comfort, some kind of insecurity. We tend to be undyingly loyal to things that, you know, we feel we need to be. We need to show up in this way or do that. And it's like, well, but if you don't want to, then you're not being loyal to yourself. If there's not an aspect that actually wants to commit to that, that's where that weird stuff starts happening. You know, and you see that in relationships, you see that in business partnerships, you see that in friendships where it's like, oh, well, I've been with them for 7 years, or I've been friends with them for 10 years. But it's like, y'all met when you were 17, like you're 27 or however old, you know, it's like, you're not the same people. And if the only thing that's keeping you together is the past, are you really committing and honoring yourself and that commitment? Or are you just loyal to something because of the concept of knowing and being loyal to the commitment and bond you had in the past? And I think that that's where settling comes in with a lot of things, with a lot of circumstances, people, places, and interactions, you know, is like, I'm not going to settle for, you know, something that it feels out of my alignment. You know, I mean, there's grace for certain things, you know, like you have a loved one that wants you to show up to a particular event. Maybe it's not your thing. Maybe you don't like going golfing or whatever the case is, but you know how much that'll make them happy and you don't actually hate it. Like you're not abandoning yourself and it just might not be your favorite thing. Like there's grace, you know, there's gray area. Just because you don't fully align with something doesn't mean you can't participate in it and support.
Oh yeah.
You know, you might just not run a league, you know, but you might just want to show up because you know that there's plenty of things that maybe other people, it's not their thing and they also show up for you, but that's not the reason why solely. It's because there's somewhere inside of you that wants to show up for that person beyond what the actual thing is that's going on.
And like to your point right there, like you are usually presented with two things, and it's like being accountable for those actions. Just like maybe your intuition was right. It was like, dang, this really wasn't the move. I really don't want to be at this baby shower right now. You know, I really don't want to be at this job. You know, that happened to me recently, and you know that I've told you that, but like I don't mind sharing this with the pod because I think this is important. You know, it's when you're in situations like, kind of like going through, kind of just earning, like when you get into the all right, so we're talking about honoring commitments, right? I feel the same way about a job, you know, almost to like on like dying on the sword for it. And that's something I've been encountering because like when I'm presenting myself, like I'm no longer just like someone just like, I'm here to get that bag. Now, like my business is part of getting that bag. How I present myself is part of getting that bag. And what I've noticed is like how important it is to make sure those things are on point, on check, you know, the prep behind that, making sure you have the right information, that pay is on the same page. And you would think these things are standard, but they're really not, because people are people. People are trying to just scam you at the end of the day. People are going through things in life. People have different priorities. People are honoring different commitments than you are. And the priority of such things and how they value those things and how they're defined within one person to the next shows up within those dynamics of earning something like money and doing a service for somebody. And you know, recently that's really eye-opening, because I think like when I was scared to commit to these things, like it was like a concept of just this wonder behind it. You know, there's this wonder when you want to start something, when you want to honor a commitment. You know, maybe it's like you're not working at a 9-to-5 anymore, you know, in the context of what I'm talking about here. I felt more it was me trying to see if I can be more self-sustainable. And I wanted to honor that because I knew my strengths within wanting to try something for myself within this space of trying to earn money for myself, that I believe there's a role for me there. I believe there's a path for me to take myself somewhere and have it be on my own terms, because I know that I'm not doing this to take advantage of somebody, but I've been in a lot of situations where people have. Yet that lesson still presents itself when I'm trying to do it the right way. And so like I think like that's the interesting aspect too when you're honoring commitments. It's just seeing who's around you and like keeping that in check, you know, and like that can be from even family members. Unfortunately, it's just a reality. You know, someone said something great the other day, and really, like, I caught it. It wasn't even told towards me. It was just told to one of my friends. And it was you know, a friend is a friend until it comes about money. Until it becomes about money. And that, like, was eye opening, because, like, you can have such acquaintances with people, and you can, like, really have, like, memorable moments, kind of like what you were talking about earlier, just about defining something based on a past relationship. And, like, a lot of times people stay in that comfort, again, kind of back to what you were saying, because, like, oh, well, I remember what they did to me in this scenario. They got me this, they got me that. But it's just like, once you're able to recognize that a boundary was stepped over, or through, a sequence of events, you stepped over your own boundary, it's, like, eye opening to be like, well, wow, like, what am I doing? Is this really for me? I think when you have that in that moment, it's probably like, it's a strugglesome, because it's like it's like earth shaking. You're ungrounded. You don't know how to gain a footing. And I think it's important to have those moments as well. As much as they hurt, as much as they can hurt you, as much as you can, like, in my situation, I got lucky. I could have been, like, scammed a bunch of money. Like, I've known people who gotten robbed at gunpoint because, like, they were literally honoring commitments that they weren't clear on 100%. But just by, like, selling, like, sneakers in the back of their car, like, nothing crazy, like, literally just, like, to a friend, out of all things, and people getting scammed. A lot of people get bitter from those experiences, like, well, then that's it, that's the rule, that there are no friends in this life, or maybe this isn't maybe they don't trust themselves even, like, maybe this isn't for me, maybe we shouldn't do this.
Well, that's the key point when people say that they don't trust anyone. It's really them saying that I don't trust myself, because I've been crossed by other people.
And there's validity to that, if you really think about it.
For sure.
There's space for you to grow in that. And it's like trusting a kid to know, like, there's that intuitive sense that they have based on their kindness and their youth, that, that's just amazing medicine, for kids to recognize that. But kids have innocence behind them, and that can, their ignorance is blissful, but it can be taken advantage of. It's just the nature of such. And we always encounter that, because we're always going to be new at something, especially when you're striving for something more than what you have around you. I think, like, that's why I take honoring commitments seriously, because, like, it starts with your own commitments, and it starts with recognizing that, like, when you really start this, you're starting from square one. I think there's a season of figuring it out. I think there's a season of struggle. And I think there's a season of, like, recognizing the patterns that have been presented to you for maybe, like, ever since the beginning of when you started this. And they're a reflection of who you are as a person, and who you surround yourself with, and how you speak up for yourself, and how you speak up for the things that you see. And just, like, yeah, I might be wrong in this, I might be backing out on this, but, like, I have facts here that, like, this isn't something how I'm trying to move forward in life anymore. And you know what? I've been in that situation where I've just also just been like, but you know what? I did say I was going to commit to this, so I'm going to ride to it regardless. And that also is, like, even the silver lining behind that. Sometimes when we're presented, even something I learned today, when we're presented with something that we were intended to honor, and it still doesn't feel right, and just evaluating that, like, why we did it, why it's important to honor those commitments. It's like part of that, like, contract, that invisible contract you sign, to just see it through, and just say, like, I'm probably going to have a better experience moving forward because of how this made me feel, because of the things I learned from this experience, because of what I can share with somebody now that I have that communication, because, like, where it came from, although it may have hurt, or it wasn't done perfectly, or it didn't feel right, I'm able to have that conversation next time, because that was something that was unclear before. That's, like, something where, like, I guess I really honor, like, where I can learn and grow from those experiences.
I feel that, first off, thank you for sharing all of that. And
thank you for listening.
Of course. And I feel that in, as human beings, like we have so many complex emotions, not to be like an anime nerd or anything.
No, but let's do it. No,
but-
let's lean in. We've been watching a
in
lot
My
of anime,
Hero,
so.
in My Hero, where a significant line that All Might says when he's talking about Bakugo and why am I and Deku, and he's like, you guys have such a complex relationship and so many complex and layered emotions that you don't even know how to interact with each other anymore. I think that a lot of people have that with so many people, and it makes commitments very confusing.
Yo, you're setting me off. I want you to go off, go off.
And in that, I think that, some people have complex emotions. We all have complex emotions, but we even sometimes have complex emotions with people we don't even know because of interaction circumstances and things that we relate or don't relate to or don't resonate with, And when we're constantly in our head and we're not in our bodies, then we can't move through it, and then when we're in our bodies and not in our head, we can't move through it either. There has to be some kind of balance between the mind, body, and spirit in order to move through anything, in full, in my opinion. And there's so much of, in that accountability and in that self-reflection of what is actually honoring ourselves, as well as our commitments. And if they still resonate and if we still want to, recommit to them, if we felt ourselves disengaged from them, is also, the process of, everything kind of falls down before it falls into place, like in a way that like, right before you're about to pass a threshold, things seem to like really not make sense a lot of times.
Oh, yeah.
And be like very hectic and, but I feel like there's so much power as well if you know your intention and you commit to that aspect of like knowing why you want to be in a place, knowing why you want to do something, and then also showing up humble and ready to learn and adapt if that's not what's optimal for that space, place, and person. If that's not what's optimal for your commitment, you can have the right intention, a good intention, and still make mistakes and still be capable of making mistakes, and when you get sat down and talked to about that, I think a huge thing too is like, no matter how much, our ego doesn't like, or an aspect of ourselves rather than using terminology, an aspect of ourselves doesn't like to be told or seen in doing something quote unquote wrong or out of protocol. When our intention was pure and it was coming from a good space, I think the most important thing to do in those moments is to just like accept the fact that this was something that you can learn from and that there's better ways to do it and that can honor yourself and your commitments more, because there's growth and learning in anything. Anything could be a teacher, to you if you are ready to be the student. And in taking those moments to really just feel into like your heart, feel into your chest and like really listen to those people around you and those situations and circumstances as well as yourself to filter out what is the noise, because that's also a hard thing when everyone is human and like there are things that ring true and then there's aspects that don't, and not taking everything for face value, but also not disengaging with things and not devaluing things just because some aspects of things didn't ring true. It doesn't mean that two things cannot exist at the same time.
It doesn't invalidate what the experience that you're having, or
exactly,
and I think that's like a testament to how true things can be in the virtues in life. The things that like having like a relationship or a bond with a certain like skill that you're developing, like a career, or if you're trying to work out, or you're trying to get better habits, and in your home, trying to develop that safe space, those goals that we set forward. And like, I mean, first of all, like, that was said beautifully. I just want to give you your flowers, because like you started off with anime and you just took like the symbolism and like took it to a place that, like, wow, yeah, that was it. That was dope. But yeah, no, I feel like, yeah, that was really like well said. I really like appreciate you saying that, because like that's just something I need to hear. That's something I've been struggling with, and I think like it's important to, like you said, give space to two truths that that's why like we were even friends in the first place when we first met. Is like we recognized like a lot of things don't make sense about who we are as people, yet they're here and they're now, and like I'm glad that they are, because like that kind of lesson isn't usually presented in most spaces, because most people are avoiding that truth because it's paradoxical, because it goes against. But that's the nature of things. They're supposed to challenge you. They're supposed to encourage struggle. They're supposed to encourage growth. That's why we have growing pains, literally. And like, again, to the symbolism of the archetypes that you made, that's a really common theme in anime. And many famous animes, you have like Naruto with Sasuke and Naruto. You have like even in like with Hashirama and Madara, in that same show, and you can look at it even in American television, like you can look at like like Zuko and Aang, they didn't look like friends, but they became friends, and like truly you can kind of tell like they both couldn't commit to what their true commitments to what their things were. That was their lessons. Aang didn't want to honor him becoming the Avatar, even though that was his destiny, and Zuko didn't want to honor his. He didn't want to truly honor his destiny from his father's perspective on becoming the next prince and finding the Avatar, and that's how he would restore his honor, restore the honor in his commitment. And he had to learn through redefining what it means for him to become a prince and what that really meant. And he learned it through a man who made mistakes, like Iroh. That silver lining, that person who really probably has done a lot of harm in that world, and came to an understanding that never sat right with him, even though that's all he knew for the longest time. And he was willing to like move forward with that. And if you don't mind, can we pivot the conversation, because I feel like we're focusing on like an aspect of it that can really use space and dedication to Iroh, which is just the lessons that you learn from those things, these commitments, the lessons that when you have something that's worth fighting for and you're just willing to try, you fall down, you tell yourself it's not going to work. But like you get that moment of like, again in anime, like that that spark that sets you into that flashback, that sets you into this notion of it's okay. Just, I still have to try. I still have to remember why I'm here, and like they throw that punch with that all that power, and it's like, it's cause like I'm doing this like for what I believe in, and like insert like what they say, and they're like, that's corny, but like, I get it, a word. And like that's why they're the main character. That's why they're an example for everyone in that show. They're both of them, both rivals. But hopefully, if they're written that way, if they have the human aspects in them, you're able to just recognize like that struggle between one another is like kind of what really reinstates the honor in your commitments. It's how you're able to handle the adversity. It's how two truths can exist at the same time, and at the same time they able to grow from each other. And that's essentially why we want commitments in general. We're trying to grow. We're trying to start from a certain place, and we're trying to get to the next level. We're trying to really like get in tune with something. We're really trying to see how it reflects our place in the world and within that space, and what we're able to do in that space, and like how that makes us feel, and the intention behind that. And like, again, in the almost in the words or in the sentiments of Iroh, like I feel like I'm in this season where like, oh, like I haven't been doing a lot of what I've set out to do from the right space.
Mm-hmm.
And I intend to change that because of what it's been shown. It's like not all like something that like everyone else's intentions may not feel right for me, and that's okay. Because that doesn't mean I have to disregard every single thing that people do, because I still find enjoyment in things, and I still find virtues in what other people do, even if it's not my walk.
It's so interesting, like the way that you put that. It like shined light, like made a light bulb go off in my brain. Like
I saw it.
almost every single, you know, in that same storyline of what we're talking about, whether anime is, you know, or TV shows, American TV shows, whatever the case is. You know, you have the aspect of like, almost every time it's a over empathetic character and a narcissistic character, but both come from trauma, and a lot of times it's the same kind of trauma, you know, and you can just see how that manifests in two different ways, where you have the person who is overly empathetic, consistently abandoning themselves and putting themselves in harm's way for other people, and then you have the other person who is so hell-bent on becoming powerful because they have felt powerless in their life and have not been centered or prioritized, so they can only center and prioritize themselves and not have the capacity to do it with others, because anytime they would do it with others, they would get harmed and feel powerless. You know, and then you have these protagonists, like in these stories, you know, fight and come together, you know, and it's like, you know, I think this is a whole other podcast, you know, to touch on that.
Like,
But I mean, in general, like something I would love to like really dive deep into in like a separate podcast, talking more about those archetypes and, you know, archetypes in general. You know, I think that would be a really great podcast to have you on about.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just like clicked a light bulb in my head, because it's like, you know, you innately kind of know that, but like to put it in those terms, because it's like we're constantly villainizing narcissists for being narcissists, right? And that word also gets thrown around quite often by anyone who exudes any form of selfishness, right?
Yeah.
And you know, and then the empath is looked at, or the empathetic human being is looked at as like this victim, you know, this or this person that does everything for everybody. And, you know, they're the same thing, just they look and feel different because they spawn from the same place. You know, just some people can benefit off of one more than the other. And then one person can benefit off of one more than the other.
For sure.
And it's just, once again, what they're loyal to, what they're committed to. Are you committed to power? Are you committed to friendship? Are you committed, like, undyingly? Is either or is unbalanced.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's like people don't look at, like, oh, yeah, being committed to friendship is unbalanced. Like, if you commit to friendship beyond reason, then you're abandoning yourself, and therefore you are unbalanced. If you're committed to yourself beyond reason, you're not committed to anything else, and that is unbalanced. So how are those not equal? You know, and I think that wherever you resonate on that pole, you know, just realizing that those are the end degrees, and there is so much space in between. And to bring it back to the topic, so are commitments. There is so much space in between to navigate and honor. You know, I have two friends of mine that they actually created a relationship contract, you know, and I thought that was such a good idea. You know, I thought that was really cool, because they can start on paper. You know, we think that contracts are like these big scary things, but on paper, you know, they can kind of reevaluate what their commitments are and if they still align. And I think that they renew it every year. So I think that's
awesome.
It's a really cool thing, you know, and there can be flexibility, and there can be, you know, playfulness still in commitments, space for receptivity. And I think that it's just for both parties to understand and acknowledge that, rather than looking at it so black and white and so corporate with anything. Because it's like, why did those people make a relationship contract? I'm sure they had commitments that weren't honored or things that weren't set clearly in their lives that they felt, you know what, let's just put on paper so we're just clear on what we're committing to here.
And like, you know, if it's like kind of what we're alluding to within the context of archetypes, you know, and I'm going to keep it grounded within this conversation of honoring commitments when two archetypes come together. And essentially, like, that's the cool thing about archetypes. An archetype doesn't have to be a person, you know, it can be a goal. It can be a place in the space that you live, you know, like a land, a house, you know, it can be a community. It can be nature. It can be your own nature. It can be yourself, you know, but in the context of what you're talking about, you know, first of all, your friends sound cool because like that's something I would definitely do, you know. I think like people would benefit from that too, from just simply like knowing that you're not going to honor those things 100%. You know, like I'm one of those people where like I'm going to be very loosey-goosey about it. So like if we don't like set the rules now, like I'm just going to be lost in the sauce, you know? So like it's like a grounding tool, you know, I'm sure, to do something like that. And that makes sense because like at the end of the day, like in the concept of like what we were talking about, just someone who's, you know, like again, like having experiences that traumatize them to the point that they intend to look out for themselves and their own selfish intentions because like of the world that didn't nurture them, and having another person with that same result, you know, actions taken against them, but they choose to do it outward. It's a reflection of both, to see a little bit of the light and a little bit of the dark of it in each other, and like have to face that. It's probably one of the biggest fears you probably have to face too, because like you're coming to terms with an aspect of yourself from another person, and you're taking yourself out of the equation, and you're getting to see the things that hold you back as a person, and you're getting to see the parts of you that you almost didn't know was a thing, you know, but then once that's the awareness, it's like it's been there all along. What's wrong with me? Ugh.
You know what I think is really interesting? You know, the logo, the things I resonate with the most have always been like, you know, yin yang, right? Extremes, two difference with the same thing inside both, right? Just an opposite. You know, but more recently in my life, in the past few years, I've been definitely diving more into homeopathy and different things like, you know, somatics and stuff like that are more integrative. And the belief system is, you know, like attracts like cures like. And I think that, you know, opposition and opposites look different sometimes. Some of them are so extreme that when you're around and navigating with certain people, you're like in the battlefield. Like it's so intense. You know, yes, there's lessons to learn. Yeah, certain things are meant to come out, but like to do that day in and day out is like exhausting and maybe not necessary, you know, as opposed to even the things that you can be most alike, or people you can be most alike in common in so many ways, there's still going to be some kind of opposites, you know, and some kind of polarities. I don't think that I you know, everything has to be so extreme anymore. And in listening to what you were saying, it just reminded me of that reflection of how like cures like in a big way. And that instead of looking at like, okay, like I've had this experience in this place and it's so negative and I need to go into the complete opposite place.
Sure.
You know, there's a space that might be similar to that place, but it's not that place, that maybe you can find more healing in than something that's completely opposite of what set you off.
The silver lining. Yeah. Wow. I want to add a little bit to that.
God.
I feel like with that, it's like that exchange of letting go. How can you honor something when like something just doesn't suit you? and you sat with that for a while. And like, even that, if that's the concept of like anything against your nature is the ops, but like your nature is also the relationship you have with the opposites, because it's also part of your nature.
Mm-hmm.
So accepting your nature, and look, people take that all kinds of different ways, and the awakening of that is like opens concepts of just things that I'm sure you've had topics just on ready, with people, and like, obviously, like if we get to do that archetype podcast, that's just something that I can definitely like enlighten, and like I'm willing to explore with you. But like I feel like just in that concept and what I learned, it's like it's this thing where, both sides of the coin, they exist as sides of the coin, not the whole coin. The when you kind of respect the harmony of things, and you're willing to just have the ebbs and flows of just like, yeah, going to the extreme, but then also like grounding it with just like being patient, just accepting that it is, sitting with it, and just like letting go of like the letting go of the commitment is like in a way honoring the true commitment to yourself, letting go of like how you think should be,
How is a hold on you?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like how that's like going against the nature of how you're meant to flourish. It goes against the nature of your goal, how you're meant to grow. I think like when we understand that, when we ask ourselves these questions that like are presented in a way that open our mind to how we can approach life in a way that feels resonant for us. It opens up like a whole conversation with yourself of just like recognizing that everything has that relationship, whether micro or macro. And it's important to just stay grounded and just like taking your time in that space and really like being okay with the differences with yourself. And hopefully you find somebody in this life that really like appreciates those differences, even when you have a hard time looking at that, and they inspire you to not only look out for yourself in a big way, so that you're able to look out for others in a big way as well.
I think that like how I see it in my mind is like you have, like I'm seeing almost like the yin yang kind of coming together. You have the black side and the white side, and like the dots of each, and kind of like spiral in a circle. And then there's some cases where that difference, like, that white side goes that way, and then that black side goes that way, because there's different ultimate goals. You know what I mean? And then you have that same kind of interaction. But at the end of it all, those two energies go in the same direction. And I think that that's a key point in knowing what's worthy and what makes sense for you to still commit to. Are you moving in the same direction as that person, or that thing or that place? Like, are your morals, are you in your core? Do you feel that this is complementing? Because it's okay to know and to have people go at things in different directions. That's okay. But if that's the goal over there and that's the goal over there, why would you be committed in the middle? Maybe you were just supposed to have an interaction, learn from that, and move into your respective spaces, because we all have different medicine, and we're all needed on this earth in different ways for different reasons beyond our comprehension. So why try to run yourself off the course and take a really long detour if you know innately you're supposed to go that way?
Right. And how can you know that innately if you haven't been interacting with the thing that kind of removes that connection to your commitment? If it severs it in a way, maybe for just a moment, and you're able to bounce back that relationship you had in that moment and how that sits with you. It's like how we even grow in the first place. It's how we even move forward in the first place, because like even if it like whether it was like kind of one of those things where like you left on such a high strong note and you're yearning for more, or like so much has happened, and it's just like too much, and like you're
complicated emotions.
Yeah. Yeah, and like the gray that we don't want, but like when you're able to sit with those things and you're able to just be like, I wouldn't be where I'm at now without that experience. I wouldn't have attracted the things that I needed to without that experience. I wouldn't be here as like, you know, as the person I am today.
With what you've learned.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, like, you know, for my God of War fans, like, how many red orbs do you need to really collect in order to, if you're just trying to like beat the game, you know? Like, you don't need to get the stats of everything. And so many games have this feature, right, where it's like you can beat the game, or even like in Mortal Kombat, you know, and you're going into the crypt, like you can collect all of these things, and maybe you'll be super powerful. But how much time and energy does it take for you to complete every single thing? And is that even fair to you? Because or is it a distraction from actually completing something?
Right.
Is it putting off completing something because you want to keep this game going for a long time? You know, or like how do you get to it? Because there's going to be another game right after that one's done.
I think that's the conversation we had yesterday. It's just like, I don't know if I'm going to even complete 10% of the game. Because like, I genuinely enjoy the experiences I'm having. I'm genuinely appreciating what I'm learning from these things. And like, I don't want that for me to be a reason for me to get lost in the sauce with these side quests or even the main mission and not enjoy the process of that.
There's that in between of doing both. I've absolutely been like a side quest queen, and I've also been like I didn't even do any of the side quests. I just completely completed it, you know. But you have games like, you know, all these games that we're talking about, like Tomb Raider 2, you know, where it's like I completed it on like 70%, 67%, and I felt content. I was like, I'm good here. Like, I beat the game. I did a few side quests. If I ever want to go back, I can. But, you know, I did what I needed to do there.
And like that, even that is like 100%. That's like evident. You see that system, you recognize that system, and at first you're just like, you disassociate because it's just not a reality. At the end, it's just a game, whatever. But then like, I've always been that person to just be like, well, it's a game, so I can play it how I see fit. Yes, there's the intention of what it's created. What were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say, if we're talking about like, you know, the Matrix, and we're really getting into like the concept of the game, you know, it's very true, you know. But it's like, once again, like, how many side quests do you need to just understand how to develop strength for a particular lesson? How many times do you need to learn the same lesson over and over again to know that you just need 10 red orbs and you can cultivate them on your own, rather than going and having to learn it in the same way? You know, it's like, it's just the same lesson dressed up as different bodies, places, and spaces, you know, and different sensations in your body. Like, you know it when you're replaying something. Yeah. You feel it, you know, and there's purpose in that, where it's like, you can feel what's coming up from the past to heal it. And you can feel what's coming up from the past, and that's bringing you into the past. And that sits different, because that doesn't feel like you're moving forward. It's like you're moving further away from where you are. And sometimes, you need to take one step back to go 2 steps forward. But you don't need to always take 2 steps back to go 1 space forward.
To me, that's like when, like, just to what's it called, to contextualize what you're saying, to like give it like something that's tangible, because I understand, like, it's like when you're like when you're playing Mario and you're trying to get those 3 stars, and you pass the mission but you have only 2 out of 3, so it's like bugging, like, yo, where is this? I gotta look the magazine, you know, I gotta like look on YouTube and see where like I can find it, you know. And like, I guess like, that's like what they would call like cheat codes, or like, you know, that would be like, you know, like insider stuff. And like, it's kind of like life, you know, where it's like, why aren't I getting this? And we get obsessed with why we're not fulfilled in what we're doing. And one thing that I noticed is like, well, there's a difference between cheat codes and like modifying. There's like looking at the core of the code and altering it for an experience that is unique to you. You know, to me, that's the silver lining, because that's giving yourself a chance to understand for yourself how these things sit with you. You know, that's why people go into just in life with healing themselves, and who want to help heal others, who want to really look out for others, who really want, you know, to be part of the game in some sort of way, and not be ashamed about their role in that game. and how they play it. Maybe we're not all the warrior and the main character. Maybe we're just a side quest guy that helps you get the weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. Maybe we're just meant to be there. And maybe we're meant to just, like, go back to the parts that we enjoyed most about the game when we've already completed our seasons with that. We already did the main story, of just, like, what we were meant to get out of it.
Yeah, think about it. Think about how many times the warrior archetype in the game dies alone.
Yeah.
It's like, that's real in real life. Like, the different deaths and rebirths you experience, even if you're still here, and then, the merchant isn't doing that. They're not having that same
until
experience.
You find out he did it like twice, and like
yeah, and then you find the iris of the situation.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because that's the gray area.
Yeah.
But it's like to be the main protagonist that's constantly fighting all the time. Like that gets exhausting.
Can we do one more archetype in that show that I feel like he was a part of?
Sure.
That like is an aspect.
Yeah.
Well, he was a part of the White Lotus. He was a part of like the secret organization that chose to look at life outside of how culturally people have opinionated the other nations, the other like bending nations, So like it was like another firebender who like recognized how dangerous it was to use his fire as a tool of anger, even though that's all he knew.
Mm-hmm.
So he put himself in a place of isolation. That was Aang's first master, the firebender, who like taught him Aang how to use fire, but then he burned Katara because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So you have people within different archetypes trying to reflect the same thing, and you can learn something from them. Even Boomy, almost the most ungrounded character, the most chaotic, craziest character, but he has such an understanding of not only himself but the world and its base functions, and his intelligence is so superior.
Well, he's so grounded. That's why he can, be
so
as loose as he is. Yeah.
It's like that drunken master style, of just like with what's his name from Naruto?
Guy. No, not Guy.
Rock Lee.
Rock Lee. Yeah. Drunken fist.
Yeah, he's just practiced so much that like he's just able to just go with the flow, and or you even look at like
it gives him the looseness because he's so grounded in his practice and rigid about it, very earth. And then you have the aspect of like the blood bending, where it gives space for the manipulation that water signs may have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and like if you really look at it too, like the other side of that, like the benefit of that, where like how Iroh learned how to redirect lightning. He learned it from going against his nature, his opposite sign of like literally protecting himself because of how waterbenders like bended water. He learned their emotions and was able to, even though respect that it wasn't his nature to be a waterbender, he was able to apply that within his own nature. I think like that is the silver lining.
Yeah,
we're able to look at
it. Shows how each of us have bits of each other within us, regardless of our archetype and our signs and our innate nature.
And look how long it took us to explain that when Iroh did it in like 2 minutes.
Well, we can all aspire to be Iroh,
literally.
But to ground that for anyone who has not watched Avatar, go watch it.
Word.
Period.
Word. I feel like we did a good job though. We
yeah.
spoiled a little bit. Sorry, but not sorry.
Yeah, no.
Some of y'all need to hear this.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And like we're not gonna do it justice either. You know?
No, you have to have your own experience. It's a very like personal journey to watch Avatar and like what it does for you. But yeah, I mean, I feel like we covered everything. Unless you have anything else that you want to touch on.
I just want to say thank you because I really needed to hear this. I've already told you just with my experiences and just like I'm trying to be patient just with the things that are coming. I'm trying to understand how to honor the commitments I'm literally developing as we're sitting here right now, and how that just reflects everything that like, I built and where I want to go with that. I think anyone experiencing that, anyone who, feels like they need to really look at themselves and evaluate what you're doing, I think you're at the right place. I think you're making that right decision because like whatever side you end up out of that, you're going to either be revisited with the same lesson for a different intention, or you're going to progress within a different cycle. And that means you're doing it right. you know. So even that, with me understanding that, I still struggle with just how that shows up for me. And thankfully I have really good people around me who just want the best for me, you know. And like I really appreciate their truths because it's allowing me to recognize my own. And yeah, hopefully I'll have the space to open up about that, you know. Well, not hopefully, in time I will have the space to open up about that, you know. And like I guess that's kind of like, I'm glad I was able to share this here because like that's like my intentions of moving forward. I just want that to be transparent within the work that I do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I want that honest manipulation, you know, and manipulation within the illusion of what I create, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of my expression to just generate things that are pulling from reality,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But I want that silver lining and respecting my nature, just like being sincere on what that means and the symbolisms behind that and the experiences that we're having, because I'm still trying to figure that out. So I thank you for this space because I really needed it.
Of course. Same here.
I'm glad we honored the commitments.
Truly.
Yeah.
Before we do go, I would like to open up this book, or if you'd like to open up the book to a page. And I would also like to say shout out to Justine for my new beautiful mug.
Word.
I love it so much. It's getting its debut.
And shout out to the Cementalistas and T-Sick for recently congratulating both me and Ashley on our new project that we're releasing soon. So stay tuned in for that, because that was probably one of my best projects of all time, with
Literally
probably one of my favorite
incredible.
people. And to have that backed by like our people, the people who really like love and care about us, people who are literally teaching us, you know, without saying much about what we just spoke on, you know.
Or saying a lot.
Oh
Depends
yeah.
on the day.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. But we love them, you know.
Immensely. And also, you know, just make sure you guys like go check out TSIC, you know, TSIC.org, TCIKH.org, you know, and go check out the projects that are up there and all the incredible work that they do, you know, as well as shout out to Staten Island Arts for, you know, giving the grant to fund this podcast. And thank you so much for everyone who helped make that possible. And yeah, so let's hop into the clarity and connection. So let's open up. What is it that we all collectively need to hear right now?
Can I make it a little more specific?
Go ahead.
How can we bring clarity to honoring our commitments? Wow. It's crazy how this honors what we were both were saying. So sometimes you need to move slowly so you can then move powerfully. The modern world is so fast-paced that you feel the pressure to keep up. Setting aside what everyone else is doing and moving at your own natural speed will help you make better decisions and lift up your inner peace. I also feel like the other side is like pretty resonant as well. Ask yourself, is this how I actually feel? Or is this my emotional history trying to recreate the past? I mean,
period.
He never misses young Pueblo.
Mm-hmm.
He or she, I'm not sure.
He.
Dope. This guy's like it. Thank you.
Thank you. And also make sure to check out Danny, you know, Third Eye Child.
Where's the camera? Right there. What's up?
On Instagram, check out his website and all the awesome offerings that he has and a bunch of other stuff coming up. I will have a link to his website shortly on my website. I'm actually in the process of making references of people that I recommend and the different things that they do, like in like shorts. So it could be like, oh, okay, boom, Kenny, you know, director, as well as like, you know, podcast host, and you know,
shout out to Kenny,
you know, words, right? Kenny, like just messing up. It's okay, y'all know what I mean. Incredible photographer, owner and establishment of an incredible art space on Staten Island. You know, Danny, incredible indigenous artist.
Just
abstract,
here learning,
doing it,
trying to be the avatar low key. But someone called me Zuko, so isn't that ironic? Literally yesterday. So.
You're Saka, bro.
I know.
You're
I'm
so
all of them,
Saka.
bro.
Yeah, no, but yeah. Word. See you next time. See you next year, probably.